Has anyone ever said to you that you don't seem autistic as though it's supposed to be some sort of compliment? Or have you always tried your hardest to fit in, but people still treat you as though you're some type of oddball? This seems to be the reality for a lot of high functioning autistic women. Despite their strength and despite their intelligence, they still go often unheard, unseen, and not well accepted. Welcome back to Shima Saba. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the world of high functioning autistic women. Right here, I'm going to supply you guys with the timestamps so you can go directly to the solutions if you want to. For my personal research, I'm going to give you guys some solutions and hopefully can be of help to you all as well. High-functioning autism is often referred to level 1 ASD, which means that they have a milder spectrum of autism. There are 3 different levels, and so these type of individuals tend to not need as much support as the other 2 types of autism. Not saying that women with level 1 don't need support at all, but it's not as in a great extent towards the other spectrum. Their experiences and their reality is still valid. But firstly, let's begin to understand what women with high-functioning autism actually look like. So a lot of these individuals tend to experience challenges with social interactions, sensory sensitivities, and internalized stress. They often develop coping mechanisms to mask their difficulties, which can lead to their struggles of being overlooked and unheard. An example of this is that you may develop a social persona. So you may have a mask that may look outgoing. They try to mimic the people that are around you, typically neurotypical people, which tends to be a lot different from how you actually show up into the world. You try to mask things that your authentic self, some things that look like you may be stemming or very intense interest, because sometimes people tend to not really, go into details about things that they're interested in. If they do, it tends to be a little bit superficial. But people with autism tend to be a little bit more hyper-focused on the things that they found very interested in. And I can relate with that. I tend to be really good at things that I found interested in, and I can hyper-focus on that for a very long time. And I remember the very first time that I began my very intense interest was with Dragon Ball Z growing up. And I was very fascinated with Dragon Ball Z. I would be watching it on the clock. I would have the show recorded. I would always draw it. My second biggest interest was when I entered into high school. I was hyper focused on different types of beauty. I was very interested in modeling. Every day I ate, slept, breathed modeling. I would literally walk down like different hallways when I was in school, and I would imagine I'm walking on a walkway. I will always watch an Tyra Banks show, Top Model. I will always watch modeling shows that would be on the TV early in the morning. There would be different types of fashion shows. I would collect Teen Vogue. You get the picture. So I was hyper focused. I can relate to the world of autism, even though I wasn't diagnosed with it. But I can say that I do see a lot of characteristics and traits. I relate to it as well.
Not in some kind of episode, but I may be slightly autistic, like Rain Man. And that's part of my superpower.
The social persona. And so with high functioning autism, you could tend to mimic the way that people talk, their speech patterns. For example, if someone says something in a certain type of way, you may not respond to the way that in which you respond. You probably respond into how you see someone else respond to it, because you probably think oh, well, this is the socially acceptable way to react in this scenario. So I remember how someone else did it, so I'm just going to replay that so that I don't seem as odd, or I don't seem to stand out, or people don't feel judge me or whatever based off whatever you say. Sad to say, but people tend to not really like to think too much about things, right? And so if they kind of like to take things as face value. So they like to take things with stuff that they're familiar with. So it could be a race that they're familiar with, certain types of hobbies that they're familiar with. So in a way that they socialize, they like to socialize in a way that they're familiar with. And so if someone else is not being a way that they're used to, they would think this is different. I don't know if I like this, or, and then sometimes they may not want to get to know the reason why, right? But those are different types of individuals. And so Not everyone is like that. I could tell you guys like some steps about how to approach those types of individuals. We'll get to that point later. If you begin to show up in a way you're using this social persona, you may be well received. You may have friendships. You may excel academically. You may be invited more. You may be much more accepted than how if you truly chose to show up as your authentic self. If you show up in a way with your social persona, it is easier for you to not feel judged and unaccepted. Another coping mechanism is needing to isolate yourself. So if you are around people for a brief or however long time you are around someone, you may tend to isolate yourself so that you can, in order for you to decompress, so that you can recharge and rebuild yourself up. Whatever it is of how you're doing that, you may stem for a bit. Any type of ways in which you may not show up around people and your authentic self, it's a safe space for you, so in which you can just relax and just be the real you without any judgmental looks or stares from anyone. The social persona or isolations, these types of coping mechanisms are not good in the long run. So that means that there needs to be a solution in order so that you don't continue to suppress yourself. And we will talk about this shortly. So before we dive into the solutions, let's talk about the common misconceptions that you may have about your own self unknowingly. Before we get to anyone willing to accept us, we have to go internal and figure out, okay, what are some things about myself that I don't accept? So I'm going to speak to you guys about 3 common misconceptions. So the very first one I want to speak to you guys about is I need my mask in order for me to be accepted. So women that are high functioning autistic may feel that their peers around them would not accept them for who they actually are, and so they have to put on this persona. They have to wear this mask or water themselves down in order to just get along or do what they have to do in society. And by doing this, it can lead to heightened levels of stress and exhaustion, and it can also make you feel as though you want to be isolated from people. This is a combination of the 2 coping mechanisms that I had mentioned. So by putting on the social persona, it makes you feel like you want to isolate, and it makes you feel exhausted. And by doing that over the long run can cause different types of health issues, and it can affect your well-being. By relentlessly hiding your authentic self, it can cause you to feel disconnected from others. It can cause you to feel alienated. And not everyone, and I want to say not everyone is 100% themselves, but there can be areas in which you should be yourself. You should have a sense of community. You should have like a sense of support systems where you can be 100% yourself. And in these areas, I'm not saying completely wear a mask, but at least show up to be yourself as much as you can be. Not hide everything about yourself. Don't hide everything of how you feel. If you feel like you need to stem, go ahead and stem. If you feel like you want to be blunt, we'll be blunt in a way around the people who understand you. If you feel like you want to be hyper focused on certain types of conversation, do those things. But again, I will speak to you more about that on the upcoming solutions. The second misconception that I want to speak to you guys about is that you may feel that your experiences are not valid because it is not as severe as the other types of autism. So compared to the more classic form of autism, which have more struggles of impairments in communication, social interaction, and cognitive functioning, high function autism tends to be less challenging as the other cases, but it doesn't mean that your experiences are not as valid. So you still may grapple with social interactions, repetitive behavior, or sensory sensitivities. These can still have an effect on your mental and your well-being, which can affect you in ways in which you're not able to seek out assistance in dealing with the issues of your autism because you don't feel that it is as more severe as the other forms. So as a result, you may suffer in silence, facing unnecessary challenges and stress as you try to navigate the complexity of life without any support in place. Another misconception is, which ties into what I just recently spoke about, is that I should be able to handle everything on my own. This could come from a result of you feeling as though you're able to do things without any type of assistance, and this could be from societal types of expectations, especially if you live in the United States, of being hyper independent, being self-reliant. These things can be present in high functioning autistic women. So an example of this is could be that you may need help for someone, and sometimes you may not want to reach out to the person. You could possibly feel a sense of guilt, or you can feel burden or any type of feelings of embarrassment because you don't want to be looked as a certain type of way. You want to seem as though that you're strong, that you are self-reliant, that you are capable. So this can lead you to not really having anyone there when you really would need them to be there, and it can also have a detrimental effect on your autism. Another example of this is that you may put too much on yourself that you can bear, pushing yourself beyond your limitations, and that can lead you into even more greater amount of stress. So as a result, trying to do everything on your own and turning down help and support, it can lead to unnecessary amounts of stress in yourself. Also can lead to effect on your particular type of autism. So now we're going to move on to the solution. So the very first one that I want to speak to you all guys about is self-acceptance. So this pretty much ties into what I originally spoke about with the misconceptions that you have about yourself. If you feel as though you want to have people accepting you, you must first accept it within yourself. Accept your unique perspectives, accept your different types of challenges, accept yourself, how you show up in the world as you are, and acknowledge that having your autism is nothing to hide or to fix. The way that you view life, the way that you pay attention to certain types of things, the way that you are detail oriented, however it is that makes you who you are, it is worth celebrating. Nothing about you is wrong. You should know that you are worth celebrating. You are worth being shown, and you are worth being seen. With this type of confidence in yourself, it allows you to view people who would treat you with the same amount of understanding and support. So you'll be more likely to pay attention to those who will view you the way that you view yourself. Also, to within the self-acceptance, also give yourself self-care, whatever that looks like. If you have different types of hobbies, whatever that brings you joy, give you relaxation, mindfulness, pay attention to those types of things. Be more engaged in those types of things, as it will be very helpful and very useful in your overall well-being. And again, as I said about the self-acceptance, when you have self-care and you have self-acceptance in yourself, you'll have a much more positive outlook or inward look within yourself. And so this will be projected onto the world around you, and you will naturally start to gravitate towards people who treat you and feel about you the way that you feel and internalize about yourself. So the next thing I want to speak to you guys about is developing strong communication skills. Articulating your needs and your different types of boundaries, it'll be much more easier for people to understand what it is that you need in particular. So this may involve using specific languages about how you prefer things and your unique perspectives. So by doing this, it helps others to understand how you view life and how you interact with the world around you. And so people can have a much more respect to your different types of limits, your different types of boundaries, and how you would want things to be done. Being open and honest about what helps or hinders you, especially around safe people, can make you feel much more supported in the world around you. So by practicing active listening and asking for feedback, can create a mutual understanding. You can have a much more inclusive world around the people in which you operate. So sometimes we may feel that we need something for a person, but sometimes we don't know how to communicate in a way in which they may receive it. And so, as well as, we also have to be mindful about what another person need may be. And so by paying attention to what someone else's need, and by communicating what we need and offering feedback, asking feedback, saying, hey, did I make myself clear? Did you understand my type of boundary? This is how you can create and keep people that are safe and supportive around you, because it's not a one way, it's a two-way street. You got to kind of meet the people. You have to meet the people in the middle, because sometimes we may show up into the world and we feel that, you know, we could be not acknowledged, or we cannot be heard, we are not understood, because sometimes it could be the way that we're not clearly articulating ourselves to people. And then sometimes we could be offensive to people, but we don't really know it, because we're thinking that, oh, well, I didn't mean any harm by it. But by articulating how you feel, and if they feel that, you know, I may feel a certain type of way about something that you said, they're giving you their feedback. So it's a back and forth. So it's not a one-way thing. And so it's very important for us to be mindful of that. And this goes for not just people with autism. This just goes for people people, period. We are all living our personal lives, and we don't really know sometimes about how we can come across to other people sometimes. And so it's important to have that sense of reflection, and especially by asking for feedback is very important. So the third solution that I want to speak to you guys about is setting boundaries and self-advocating. This is very important for us to ensure that our mental health is well, so others can respect our needs. You should feel empowered to say no to different situations that can bring you discomfort or make you feel not at ease. Communicating these boundaries can help people know the limits in which you can go, and the limits in which where you start and where this other person's in. So it is not a bad thing to set a boundary. It's a tool that can help you with your well-being around others that is around you, because a person don't really know how far they can go unless you tell them to stop. Like, no, don't go beyond this point. An example of this could be that you say, hey, I may need some time alone when I get off of work, because later on, if you want me to go to this event with you, I may not be socially charged around that, so I may need some alone time. And I want to point out that if the person that you are telling this boundary to, I want you guys to be mindful of that, because it's important to recognize different types of individuals. And I know that it could be a bit tricky, especially if you're dealing with autism. In a way, it could be a bit kind of people pleasing, because you want to mask and you want to be accepted. And if you set a boundary, especially if this is something that you're used to, if you're not really used to doing, it's important to be mindful of the people, how they show up towards your boundary. If they're making you feel question about yourself, if they're making you feel that you could be a sense of crazy, be mindful of that person, because that may be something that you may have to reconsider if this who you want in your life, because pretty much this person is telling you no and they don't respect your boundary. If someone is not respecting your boundary that you have, and your boundary is your own perspective, they're not validating that is something to be very cautious about. Advocacy is more than just setting boundaries. It is asking for accommodations, whether it be at work or at school. It's asking for appropriate medical or therapeutic support. By standing up for yourself, it is teaching others the importance of your accommodations. It is letting others know that the experience that you are going through are real and that they are valid. So the fourth one I want to speak to you guys about is seeking out supportive communities. It is very important to have a community of which you can see yourself in. So being around people that are like-minded can be easier for you to feel understood. So fostering an environment and creating one for your own self is very important. And so you can find things such as going online or in-person types of groups. You can find them through hobbies. You can go to autistic organizations. You can go to certain types of special interests that you guys have, so that you may not feel disconnected in whatever areas that is the most important for you. These spaces, you're able to speak your perspectives, your experiences, and your challenges around people who may understand it, whatever it is that you're going through. You can also mentor people and also be mentored. So that is something to be mindful and think about, because as I mentioned earlier, it can be easy to feel disconnected from people, especially if you're wearing a mask most of the time, and especially if you don't feel understood. So by being around people who have gone through situations that you've gone through, and they can be a support and a guidance of you, is very necessary. And also, if you feel that you may see someone's younger and they're at a stage in life in which you've already been through, you can give them some type of support and help as well. And by being a help and a service of others, it is a very good feeling. Putting back positive energy to others individual is always a good thing to experience and always a good thing to do. Being in these different types of organizations, it can amplify the voices of high functioning autistic women. And so this can be an advocacy within its own self. By getting your message across to others, it can create a much more cohesive society in the long run. This ties into the fifth subject, which is educating others. By promoting high functioning autism, especially within women, and also dispelling different types of myth about autism around people that have a willing ear, is very useful. So providing information that teaches others that, hey, autism is not a limiting condition. This is just another person interacts with the world differently from how you interact with. Encouraging and giving knowledge to others allows them to be much more used to this topic, because sometimes people aren't familiar with information, and Once people begin to become familiar with things, over time they'll be much more understanding about it, and then they will begin to accept more of it. Because sometimes people tend to be a little bit lazier and they don't like to think things through. They don't like to think about things that be a little bit different. But sometimes information needs to be presented in front of others. Sometimes things that are different from them needs to be put around other people. So then over time they'll begin to accept more of it without having to think about it. And they're just like, okay, this person is autistic, so it's nothing wrong with them. They just view life in a different way than I view life. That doesn't mean that they're beneath me, or it doesn't mean I'm above them or anything like that. They just see life different from me, and I can accept that and I can respect that. It is important to educate people in any ways and means in which you could. It could be personal experiences and challenges. It could be through books. It could be through documentaries. It could be through YouTube videos. It could be through different types of podcasts, whatever and however it is that you can do. But just putting the information out there and sharing with people, it can also show other people that, hey, I identify with these traits as well. By fostering a word of empathy, you can build a foundation of much more acceptance in the world around you. Which ties into the last subject. It's about empathy. Choose much more empathic people to be around. So surround yourself around people that are naturally empathic, that are patient, and that are willing to learn more about autism. This is what to look out for. So in a person that has empathy. So notice if they are actively listening to you, they're not interrupting, and their responses are following up to what you have said, because they are trying to process and understand whatever information that you have given them in regards to autism. And also pay attention if they offer consistent support. They're not just being supportive when it's beneficial to them, but are they supporting you when you're not asking for it? Are they showing up for you? Because it's important to have friends that are doing things for us, that are there for us, and at the same time, we're giving and receiving, we're giving things for them, but be mindful of people that are consistently supporting you, not when they're just benefiting from it. And also empathic people, they follow through on their words, and so they're not giving you false promises. If they're telling you, hey, I'm going to be here at a certain time, they're going to be here at a certain time. Just pay attention to that, because actions speak louder than words. And lastly, I do want to point out that impacted people tend to validate your experiences. And not saying that they are validating everything that you are doing, because your actions may not agree with your actions, but your perspective of how you feel. No one can tell you how you feel, but when a person validates how you feel and they're not trying to fix it and they're not trying to diminish it, it shows that they have empathy for you. To be around much more supportive people, much more empathic people that are naturally that way, are much more easier to be much more accepting and understanding of you. Acceptance and understanding is important to everyone, but especially women who have high functioning autism. By educating others, sharing your experiences, and advocating for yourself, you can have an overall wonderful quality of life. I hope you found this video useful. If you all have high functional autism, please share your experiences in the comment section. Maybe others can relate to them. And also, can you leave in the comment section if you are part of any different type of organization or special interest? Please drop it below in the comment section, as others may find this information useful. I hope this video has been very helpful for you all. As always, I thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.